Jean walked with measured steps, her shoulders hunched against the city's unrelenting wind. The handle of her suitcase rattled against the cracked sidewalk, the wheels stuttering over uneven pavement. She hadn't packed much, just what she could carry. Everything else, the remnants of her life before, remained in cardboard boxes stacked in her parents' garage. Things she hadn't touched in years, things she wasn't sure she wanted to see again. She hadn't planned on ending up here, a job interview over the phone, an offer without warmth, just a date and an address, housing included. That was all she needed to hear. A way out, a place to disappear. The last few months had picked her life apart, stitch by stitch. She'd been a student teacher once. A good one. Back when she was still with Brad, before the pictures, the ones she hadn't known about, the ones everyone else had seen before she did. An educator must be a role model, that's what they'd said. She wasn't a teacher anymore. Now she stood at the foot of her new reality. The hotel loomed above her, its once grand facade faded and cracked, its neon sign flickering weakly against the evening gloom. The Harroway Hotel, or what was left of it. The kind of place that had stories soaked into its bones, that smelled of old carpet and forgotten promises. The street was quiet, but not comfortably so. A group of men lingered near the corner, their conversation low and sharp. Across the street, a shopkeeper hovered near the entrance of his store, one hand on the half-lowered metal grate, watching her like he was waiting for her to make a decision, for him to decide whether to close up for the night. Jean adjusted the strap of her bag and squared her shoulders. A job is a job. She'd made it this far. She could make it through one night. She reached for the handle. The brass was tarnished, cold against the warmth of her palm. She hadn't even pressed down before creak. The doors swung inward, slow and soundless, revealing only darkness beyond. Waiting, inside. Jean stepped inside, and the smell of the place struck her immediately. Not unpleasant, just strange, rich, layered, shifting. It unsettled her in a way she couldn't name, like a memory just out of reach. One moment, it was incense. Then something metallic, then gone. She hesitated, her grip tightening on the handle of her suitcase. The lobby stretched before her, dimly lit by a chandelier missing more than a few bulbs. The floor was marble, dulled by years of footsteps, and a long runner of carpet led toward the front desk, a massive ancient thing of dark wood and brass fittings. It felt like stepping into a forgotten time, a place preserved not by care, but by sheer refusal to change. A man's hunched backside was barely visible behind the towering ledger at the desk.
Hello, I'm John Patina. Hear about the job?
As soon as she said it, something nagged at her. She hadn't actually been told what the job was. The interview had been a blur of polite questions, nothing specific. They'd asked about her availability, her willingness to relocate, her ability to keep odd hours. And she'd answered without thinking, too desperate for an escape to realize she hadn't asked a single question of her own. The man straightened, joints popping. He moved with the careful slowness of someone long past youth. When he turned, his face was lined with age and experience.
Hello, Miss Patina. I was told to expect you.
His voice was warm but measured, like each word had been considered before it left his lips.
I'm Mr. Thorne.
Nice to meet you,
she said automatically. Then after a beat,
I wasn't really told what to expect.
Mr. Thorne gave a slow nod.
That's the way with management.
The capital M was unmistakable.
They prefer to keep you in the dark.
Jean frowned. That wasn't much of an answer, or rather it was, just not to the question she'd actually asked. Without further comment, Mr. Thorne reached under the counter and placed a small brass sign on the desk. Ring bell for service. Then, without another word, he grabbed a heavy key ring and gestured for her to follow. The switchboard, she trailed behind him through a side corridor, the air cooler, quieter. The polished floors of the lobby gave way to something older-worn tile, scuffed and dull. They stopped at an elevator, its brass doors etched with faded symbols. Dust rimmed the edges, untouched by cleaning hands. Mr. Thorne slid a key into the panel and turned it. The mechanism groaned, gears grinding like something waking up after too long in the dark. The doors rattled open, revealing an old-fashioned cage elevator. The kind she'd only seen in movies. the kind that looked like it should lead somewhere. It shouldn't. Jean hesitated before stepping inside. The elevator lurched downward, her stomach dropping with it. A basement, the doors creaked open to reveal a space lost to time. Storage shelves loomed in the dimness, draped in thick sheets. A scattering of old furniture chairs, a desk, a lamp with a beaded shade peeked from beneath the coverings. Dust motes drifted in the low, golden light of a single hanging bulb. It seemed lonely, though perhaps not if she was going to be a phone operator. They stopped at a door at the far end of the basement. Mr. Thorne pulled a single key from the ring and pressed it into her palm.
I'll let you do the honors.
Jean hesitated, then slid the key into the lock. The door clicked open. Inside, the first thing she noticed was the machine. An enormous switchboard took up an entire wall, a dense forest of wires, dials, and gleaming brass fittings. It looked like something from an H.G. Wells novel, intricate, elaborate, impossibly well kept. The polished casing gleamed, untouched by dust, despite the rest of the basement settling into decay. Tiny indicator lights flickered in slow, rhythmic pulses. She stared. The boys from her class would have called it steampunk. Off to the side, a small adjoining room held a modest bed, a dresser, and a narrow bathroom. Simple, but serviceable. She'd lived in smaller. Jean set her suitcase down, glancing back at Mr. Thorne.
So how do I do this?
The switchboard rang. Mr. Thorne showed her how to answer the call. The switchboard's wiring loomed in front of her, an intricate maze of cords and brass jacks, humming faintly beneath her fingertips. A soft click, then an older woman's voice drifted through the receiver. Warm, familiar, too familiar, like a voice she might have heard in a dream.
Oh, how delightful to have an operator again. I'd like to be transferred to the Crimson Casino.
A casino?
Yes, ma'am, one moment.
She placed her hand over the mouthpiece and glanced at Thorne, mouthing, "There's a casino?" The old man didn't react to the strangeness of the request. Instead, he reached for a leather-bound book mounted on the wall beside the switchboard, its cover cracked with age.
The directory is alphabetized. Here it is. 10 over, 2 down.
Jean frowned. What does that mean?
Coordinates 10 over, 2 down. The switchboard is much too dense for labels.
Jean leaned in, squinting at the dense forest of wires. The panel stretched across the wall like a living thing, a lattice of braided cords and polished brass connections, each plug a doorway leading somewhere unknown. She traced a path across the panel, counting carefully, 10 over, 2 down. There, a single jack, waiting. But when she reached for it, her fingers brushed against another wire already connected.
Jean hesitated. What do I do with this one?
Disconnect it. That call ended weeks ago.
Weeks?
A chill crept along her spine as she gripped the wire. The cord was warm, almost pulsing, as if it remembered something, a lingering echo. She unplugged it, a flicker, a sensation like a breath against her ear or a whisper spoken just outside the range of hearing. She saw a hand pressing against red velvet, a spinning roulette wheel, smoke curling in the air, laughter sharp as broken glass, a man's face distorted in a gilded mirror, watching, waiting. Then it was gone. Jean swallowed hard and plugged the caller's wire into the empty slot. A faint click, a hum, the call transferred. She released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding.
And that's all there is to it.
Jean stared at the switchboard. No, she thought, it's not. Chapter 2, Do Not Connect. Jean barely had time to unzip her suitcase before the switchboard rang again. She hesitated. Her pulse jumped, though she wasn't sure why. It was just a call. She hurried back into the operator's room, breathless as she lifted the receiver.
Hello, how may I direct your call?
A pause. Then the wall-mounted directory lit up, illuminating a single number. The caller was isolated, standing alone on the board. The brass plaque beneath it gleamed under the sickly yellow light. Room 717. Her fingers tensed around the receiver. Then a voice. Deep, smooth, warm, yet carrying a resonance that made it feel too large for the speaker.
Hello, can you connect me to the main lobby?
The single word stretched, curling like smoke. The room suddenly felt too empty, the basement air too thick. She should hang up. Jean wet her lips.
I'm sorry, sir. I've been instructed not to transfer you anywhere.
Then a soft chuckle, low and indulgent. the kind meant to put her at ease, but somehow it did the opposite.
Ah, that Mr. Thorne. He's playing a prank on me. Do connect me to him so we can laugh together.
Jean's grip on the receiver tightened. Something about the way Mr. Thorne had spoken before, "Don't transfer calls from room 717. He hadn't said it lightly. There had been no room for discussion. She should hang up, and yet her thumb hovered over the disconnect switch, but she hesitated. What could be the harm? She didn't know, but she'd been given instructions. She wouldn't lose this job on the first night.
I can take a message, but I've been told not to transfer you, sir.
A pause.
So cold. Such a pretty girl shouldn't be so formal.
The breath caught in her throat.
What makes you think I'm pretty, sir?
She should know. She swallowed hard.
I could tell you stories, young one. Stories that would curl your hair. About Mr. Thorne, the hotel, the previous operators.
A chill traced her spine. An irrational thought bloomed. How does he know my hair is straight? She nearly asked, but he continued before she could.
But alas, if you won't transfer me, I can only tell one. A shame, really. Wouldn't want to slake your curiosity too easily. Mr. Thorne, I think.
Jean should have shut it down, should have redirected him, should have done anything except what she did.
What about Mr. Thorne?
717 smiled through the receiver. She couldn't see it, but she felt it.
Ah, excellent choice. He craves the taste of human flesh.
Jean recoiled.
Why would you say something like that?
Ask him about the War of Northern Aggression. About the cave.
Jean hesitated.
They were bivouacked in a cave. A landslide buried them. The water could get in, but they couldn't get out.
Something in his voice changed, not in tone, but in rhythm. Like a storyteller sinking into well-worn lines, a chant passed through time.
The hunger crept, the men grew thin, ribs poked out through paper skin. The dead lay still, their voices ceased, but Thorne, he longed for feast.
Jean exhaled slowly. It felt like the words had shifted something in the air, like dust disturbed in an empty room. 717's voice didn't falter.
Carrion's cold, the taste is wrong. No pulse, no warmth, no life, no song.
Jean's stomach twisted. She tried to speak, to cut him off, but the words weren't hers to interrupt.
So out came the blade, the bayonet bright, and warm blood spilled in lantern light.
Jean's breath hitched. She felt the weight of the words settle in her chest, heavy and sick. War of Northern Aggression? That was the 19th century. He was saying Mr. Thorne was... No, that was ridiculous. But the words wouldn't leave her throat, because she wasn't sure what part she was trying to deny. Enough, she said, but her voice was too soft.
The only survivor, young one. Ask him yourself. No food has ever tasted right since. He remembers.
The receiver burned against her ear.
Well, if that's all, I guess I'll talk to you later.
The line clicked, not a soft disconnect, but a sharp, decisive cutoff. Jean pulled the receiver away, staring at it, pulse hammering. The air around her still felt occupied. The day continued. Jean barely had time to dwell on the strange call, the words lingering at the back of her mind like the remnants of a dream. The work demanded her focus. The calls came steadily, but they weren't what she'd expected. Operator, I'd like to be transferred to the Crimson Casino. Jean flipped through the directory, finding the coordinates easily this time. She barely needed to read them. Her hands moved without hesitation, pulling the correct wire, slipping it into place. The connection clicked into being with a strange satisfaction. She should have wondered how she was learning this so quickly, but she didn't. The Spectral Coliseum, please. Spectral. She didn't like the sound of that. Still, she placed the call, catching snippets of voices before the connection stabilized. The last champion was devoured, but I hear this one might last the night. Jean pulled back, a chill brushing her skin. The Grand Lounge. She thought it might be a bar, based on what people said. Tell them to bring more absinthe, but the old stock, none of that pale imitation. Oh, did you hear? The pianist has hands again. He'll play tonight. Jean didn't ask. She didn't want to know. It became easier. Too easy. The wires found her fingers before she found the connections. She stopped reaching for the book. She didn't need it. She should have questioned that, but she didn't. The board knew her hands, and then a knock at the door. Jean turned, heart-skipping.
Miss Patina, I'm here to inform you it's dinner time.
She hesitated before opening the door. The young man standing there looked normal almost. His features were pleasant, symmetrical, but something in his expression, or perhaps his posture, struck her as off, feral. It passed in an instant. When she blinked, he was just a well-dressed boy with docile eyes. Jean frowned.
Do I just leave the board? What if someone calls?
They will not. Dinner time is sacred at the Harroway. Mr. Thorne insists you attend.
The boy's voice was calm but firm. Jean glanced down at her dusty clothes.
Like this?
Of course not. You will find appropriate attire in the closet.
Jean rushed back to her room, pulse quickening. Had there even been a closet before? She had barely looked, but she could have sworn. But it was there now. Inside, rows of fine dresses, spanning decades, even centuries. It was like she'd stumbled into a reenactment wardrobe. Silks, lace, high collars, sweeping skirts, each garment exquisite, far beyond what she would have ever owned. Jean ran her fingers along them, the fabric too cool, too perfect.
These are really for me? They seem too fine.
They are.
John turned. The boy stood in the doorway, watching her with an expression she couldn't place.
They have been tailored to you.
A shiver crawled up Jean's spine. She hadn't been measured for a uniform, not once. No one had asked for her size. She hadn't filled out a form. There had been no fitting, no fabric against her skin, no tape around her waist. And yet, the dresses would fit her perfectly. Someone knew. Jean's fingers drifted over the fabrics, stopping on something light, delicate, sun-warmed cotton. A plantation belle's dress. Soft cream, a hint of lace, the kind that belonged to another time, another war. She shouldn't have picked it. She didn't even like dresses like this. But something in her ached at the sight of it, the cut, the way the fabric whispered against her skin when she lifted it from the hanger. She should have picked something simple, something from a later era. But she didn't. The name had stuck in her mind like a splinter, the War of Northern Aggression. She didn't know why, or rather she didn't want to. She stepped back into the main room, smoothing the fabric self-consciously. How do I look? The boy tilted his head, considering her, and then, just for a second, his lips parted, bearing something sharp. The feral look flashed again, quick as a blink. Jean wasn't sure she'd really seen it. The boy smiled.
Like you belong.